Welcome to another episode of The Dissection. This man is one of the most dangerous men in South Africa. I'm convinced of it at this particular point. Katiso Molefe. He was denied bail yesterday. Rightfully so. Justifiably so. Not only is this man one of the most dangerous men in South Africa, I'm convinced that his arrest could lead to the unraveling of the plan to steal one of the largest amounts of money from the PIC through a project in Valcom to construct an airport. The Pandora's box that was opened by General Mkhwanazi is so explosive that I don't know if this man will actually make it out of prison alive, if his trial will finish while he's alive, if all the commissions will finish while he's alive. Katiso Molefe is a very dangerous man. And in today's episode, I'm going to tell you how he almost stole a whole airport. An airport. Not a road. Not a traffic light. Not a pothole. This man and his co-conspirators, whoever they may be, and I'm convinced that some of these co-conspirators are at the very top. They were trying to steal an airport and hundreds of billions of rands. The kind of money that we heard was being stolen in state capture. In denying his bail, the judge mentioned several factors. Number one, the case which is actually against the people who orchestrated or conducted the hits, the murders, is very strong. Number two, the criminal history of Katiso Molefe is such that it should warrant people to be a little bit reticent to grant him bail. He has a drug conviction in the United Kingdom, a fraud conviction in the United Kingdom. Number three, he used a fake Lesotho passport when he was convicted in the United Kingdom. He was going under an alias on a fake passport from a different nation, a nation which has also been implicated in Zama trade, and there are questions which have been posed to the Prime Minister of Lesotho right now about his relationships with Vusimuzi Matlala, the other person who is implicated in the murders which were uncovered by General Mkhwanazi or linked to the murders which have been investigated by the Political Killings Task Team, which was disbanded under the leadership of General Mkhwanazi. This particular piece of information worried the judge because it indicated that Mr. Katiso Molefe is capable of a variety of criminal talents and activities, such as which have not been fully explored. And when you have such a criminal mastermind facing such allegations, who also has fake passports and has been going up and down the continent and the world using fake passports, that's an issue of concern. Number four, there's missing evidence which could still be destroyed or tampered with. For example, there's a missing AK-47 which was used in murders and whose ballistic reports may also link to other murders. That gun is not yet identified or located. And Katiso could just get out of jail, go to Sandton, get into his Jeep or whatever car he drives, and get rid of that. Number five, there were large amounts of cash which were paid into his accounts, and they came from unidentified sources. Unclear, getting large amounts of money. This is a fellow living in a mansion, getting large amounts of money. The judge didn't disclose how much he was just getting, but it was a large amount of money. Number six, the judge acknowledged that the evidence, while it is not direct and is circumstantial, he was of the view that there is a clear inference of guilt that can still be deducted. And even though there is circumstantial evidence, that doesn't mean that Mr. Katiso Molefe is somebody who can just say, there's nothing to link me to this particular set of crimes. The judge was very clear that a paymaster will obviously not be at the site of the crime because he's calling the shots from a Sandton mansion, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's not involved. And by the way, Mr. Katiso Molefe was calling all of the hitmen minutes after hits were committed. The killing of DJ somebody, the killing of DJ Vintos. He was on his phone calling them 8 times, 10 times, trying to find out, presumably, if the job was done. Number 7, the balance of probabilities. The judge considered that, look, the balance of probabilities, which is what I have to look at in this bail application, it appeared to the judge to indicate that, look, my buddy, the case is not in your favor. You have not proven to me on a balance of probabilities. And because these are Schedule 6 offenses, the burden is extremely high on the accused to prove that he should be granted bail. Number 8, payment records on the days of the hits. Cell phone tower records showing that the hitmen, who did not live anywhere near Sandton, were in Sandton. They were depositing amounts of 100,000 into their bank accounts after meeting Mr. Molefe. Mr. Molefe himself was talking to these people on the days of the hits, days close to the hits, days after the hits. Very incriminating. Number 9, there were WhatsApp messages, which also made the judge extremely concerned. This guy was promising people in WhatsApp messages that bail would be granted. They were sending each other congratulation messages after getting bail, calling it teamwork, saying, you see, teamwork works. If I'm a judge, seeing you have a conversation where you are saying, I'm so happy I got bail, teamwork works, or even promising people in advance that you're going to get bail, I'm not going to give you that bail. I'm not giving it to you. And if I read those text messages where you are self-snitching, you're definitely staying in because you are a liability, a danger, a threat. Number 10, the evidential link has changed and increased since the last time that Katiso Molefe was in front of a judge looking for bail. So much more information is available to the police, and they adduced that information as they were, opposing bail. The prosecution team and their affidavits and their statements and their argumentation, they showed the judge that there is no basis whatsoever to let a man of this criminal nature be moving around in society. The judge said the personal circumstances that Molefe argued to make a case for him to be let go do not override the other concerns. The public interest, the public concerns were such that he had to stay inside. And the judge also said his circle of influence and capabilities. The judge looked at all of this and said, this is a man with a peculiar set of talents. This is the Liam Neeson of criminality. I'm not going to allow South Africa to be taken further. The judge said his circle of influence and capabilities persuaded him that this man should not be let out into society, that he's a menace to society, a threat to society, a danger. He is the one who knocks. That's what the judge was persuaded of. Bail denied. The judge was right to do so, in my opinion. Katiso Molefe has been implicated in so many high-profile murders, so many of the things that Jerome Kwanazi was speaking about, that I don't think that he should be anywhere in society. DJ Somebody, the other people who've been killed in the tender whistleblower issues. Think about this. The whistleblower issue, right, where Amand Swart was killed. His son, Lucky Molefe, who is still at large, somewhere in Mozambique or Lesotho, we don't know, at large. And he could also be heavily involved in the types of behavior his father is still involved in. So Lucky Molefe goes to work at Transnet Freight and Rail. Katiso Molefe's companies bid for tenders at Transnet. They win the tender. How they win that tender? Open-ended question. Then there's a case of mistaken identity, unfortunately for Amand Swart, because he was mistaken for the whistleblower and he was shot 23 times. 23 times. What the whistleblower uncovered, and that whistleblower is still anonymous to the public, but may very well be known and may appear in the court case. The whistleblower uncovered that their company, which is based in Vereeniging, was producing springs, little springs, this size. Those springs had a unit price of 3 rands, but they were being sold to Transnet for 152 rands per spring by Katiso Molefe. An order of 8,000 units was made, which would have cost 25,000 rands to Transnet. It turned into an order of 1.2 million. The so-called businessman looting and milking South Africa dry. But this is cheese on bread for him, considering what I'm about to tell you. It's become very clear that Katiso Molefe's role in all of these murders is allegedly that of the mastermind and the paymaster. The question then becomes, on whose behalf was he doing all of these things? Is he the CEO of the criminal syndicate, or is he the chief operations officer of the criminal syndicate, or is he the head of security, the enforcer of the criminal syndicate? I believe he's not the boss. I believe he's the enforcer. The pertinent question I'm asking myself is, who else is involved in all of this? Right now, we've seen that 4 cities seem to be dominant in the drug industry side of this question. We've got Durban, Pretoria, Johannesburg, Cape Town. But to me, looking at the network of people involved, right, as we know from the allegations, the WhatsApp messages, and some of the developments which have played out, This scandal seems to involve ministers, other politicians, gang owners, owners of nightclubs. This, to me, is not a small-scale operation, and Katiso Molefe is one of the central figures, but I don't think he's the only figure that we should be thinking or concerned about in this particular issue. Then comes the question, how did the man get bail last year? The types of allegations that he's facing, the various factors mentioned by the judge yesterday, all of these were pertinent and true last year. It's not like he had fake passports in 2025, but he didn't have them in 2024, right? The Gauteng Deputy Judge President, Audrey Ledwaba, granted him bail after he was denied bail in the Vereeniging Magistrate Court. And there are legitimate questions which have to be asked. Why was he granted bail? Why am I saying this? General Mkhwanazi said, from what they've uncovered in their investigations, these networks go into the judiciary, they go into the political world, they go into the police service. And there is an irrational awarding of bail last year that leads to the question, are judges being intimidated? Are judges participating? Who within the judiciary has been helping this criminal syndicate to operate with impunity, rotating, being on the streets, in the jail, back on the streets, while people are losing their family members, while people are losing businesses, homes? Katiso Molefe, the house that he lives in, was in a scandal of its own. It's a 26 or so million rand house. I did an episode explaining how that house was hijacked. This man was a sophisticated criminal, associated with sophisticated criminality wherever he goes. Even the arrest in the 2000s, where he was in the UK, it was a large syndicate operation. He was already 40 at the time when he was arrested for that. It makes you ask, what else has this man been up to? Who else has he been working with? These are significant questions. This guy, history of drugs, convicted in the year 2003 for fraud, right? Fake passports. This is the type of person who can influence investigations directly and indirectly. Directly, he has hitmen on his phone who he pays hundreds of thousands of rands who can show up at your workplace and shoot you 23 times. They can shoot you as you come out of a nightclub. They can shoot you at a gate. They can shoot you at a traffic light as you're waiting for the robot to turn from red to green. This is a dangerous man. And this man here seems to me more lethal than King Von, one of the most prolific serial killers in the history of hip-hop. He has nothing on Katiso Molefe. Indirectly, we must never forget that on the day of his arrest this year, a former gangster, somebody also who's got a best friendship with another former gangster, was at his house, Kenny Kunene. At the time, he was an MEC in Gauteng province. He was at the house of this notorious gangster called a businessman by a lazy media. Kenny Kunene was there at his house. He's since lost his job, his political position as a result of this association, as Gayton McKenzie, quote-unquote, investigates through the law firm what relationship Kenny Kunene has with Katiso Molefe. But Katiso Molefe is not a joke. He's not a joke. He is not a joke in any shape or form. It's quite worrying. It's quite worrying how he got bail. We mustn't forget that he was in conversation with Vusimuzi Matlala and Brown Mkhotsi, the Brown Mkhotsi who we still don't know much about. You know, the media has been telling us a lot about the, IDT CEO and all of that and how she's offering bribes. We're beginning to see a lot in terms of information, satellite images, all of that stuff around the building of a mansion. But this Brown Mkhotsi, still don't know much about him from the media. Where are the spiderweb thingies? Where are they? We need that information. Why is the media dragging its feet, kicking and screaming to some of the pertinent things? Even this guy, Katiso Molefe, why for years singazwa lutho ngaye, which is to translate, say, why don't we hear anything about him? It's a legitimate question. We now know how criminals have expanded their reach beyond drugs and guns to government contracts. And Katiso Molefe is one of the key figures in letting us understand how this happens. And to be quite honest, it makes sense in a sense. Because these gangsters, these drug dealers, these gun traffickers, They probably saw that there was little difference between themselves and the politicians who were stealing from the people. The only difference is the branding. Some people are called notorious gangster. They're called controversial. And the other people are called honorable, so-and-so. They are called businessmen by the media. Some are holders of honorary doctorates. So we call them Dr. So-and-so. Imagine. So if I'm the gangster knowing that I'm working with these people or I'm associated or affiliated with these people, we're together in the nightclubs doing all kinds of shenanigans, at some point I'm going to be like, why should I leave you to steal from the hospitals by yourself? I can get in there. I can participate in this Hosh Kari behavior myself. And I think this is what has happened. There was a case in Cape Town, which, while it has fallen from the national focus at this particular point, I think we must keep it in mind. Malusi Boy was an MEC, DA member, MEC in the city of Cape Town, and he was accused of awarding construction contracts to Ralph Steinfeld, a notorious gangster in Cape Town, known leader of the 28th gang, the Numbers gangs. You know, the Minister of Sports, Arts and Culture used to be in Numbers gangs as well. Now he's a soccer team owner through his son. Said he secured funds of up to 400 million. There's no company that he owns on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, but he has that kind of money. The things what we are seeing are quite curious and interesting. So, let me just continue talking about this Malusi Boy story. So, the allegation was there was a tender worth 1 billion rand that was given to Ralph Steinfeld for construction in the city of Cape Town. In fact, the case was so big, Ralph Steinfeld was arrested, his wife was arrested, Malusi Boy was arrested, 22 people arrested in that case. It's been dropped right now. The charges have been withdrawn. The NPA says it's going to come back and, reinstate those particular charges. But as this story is frozen right now, the reason why I think the charges have been withdrawn is that I think witnesses have stopped talking, either temporarily or permanently. These amounts of money that we're talking about, they're not small amounts of money. These gang leaders now have aspirations of being Pablo Escobar. They're moving to solidify their legitimacy by moving from the criminal underworld into the formal business world, into the corridors of power. Remember, Pablo wanted to be a member of parliament. He wanted to go for the whole thing. And then they prevented him. And one of his biggest frustrations was that he couldn't participate in the world of politics in the way that he wanted, because he was making a lot of money, busy dishing out money to the very same communities he was destroying, being viewed as a hero while he was destroying those very same communities. This is what it looks like has been happening here. So back to Katiso Molefe. He has been implicated in another massive Hosh Kari scandal, and it's worth over 30 billion rand directly, but over 200 billion rands when you consider the scope of the project. There were reports over the weekend that he orchestrated a tender hijacking for a multi-billion rand cargo airport. There's an abandoned airport in Welkom, and a tender was advertised for that airport, and it was initially awarded to a company which is based in the Free State, 2023. 2 days after the advertisement of the tender, the Hosh machine started moving. Hosh machine. It's a classic example, this story I'm about to tell you, of how Hosh Kari behavior happens. Companies were registered 2 days after the tender was advertised in August of 2023. Then, through the miracles of AK-47 persuasion methodologies, through the miracles of AK-47 persuasion methodologies, through the miracles of AK-47 persuasion methodologies, boom shakalaka, Katiso Molefe's company, Sebastian Investissements and Logistique. That's the name of the company. Can you believe it? Just make it sound a little bit foreign, a little bit French, a little bit ooh la la, and then this is what he was learning in Europe. That company was awarded the multi-billion rand tender to develop the abandoned Welkom Airport into an international cargo port, passenger port, and aviation academy. This project was initially awarded to a local company which is called King Michael's. Imagine doing all of the work to get a government contract the legitimate way, only to discover that a Hosh Don father has taken over your tender. None other than the grand Hosh Kari grandfather himself, Katiso Molefe. How do you even confront a guy like this? He had taken over the tender. Rand 30 billion was allocated to this airport project. Not only that, more than 122 billion was allocated for road infrastructure to connect Welkom to Bloemfontein, to Joburg, Northern Cape, Cape Town. The presentation for this project, seen by the media houses which were reporting on the story, also indicates that 200 billion was allocated for additional amenities, including building a smart city near the airport, a bullet train, a car assembly plant, cultural village. In total, actually, the total amount is 352 billion allocated to all of this. Think about that amount. 352 billion. I don't think that he was acting alone. I don't think so. It's not a small project, and we've been hearing from speeches of senior politicians that there is 1 trillion rand which is going to be spent on infrastructure. We've been hearing from senior politicians about smart cities, etc. And we've been hearing how money from the PIC is going to be used for these projects. Now, if this PIC money ends up in the hands of Katiso Molefe and his network of criminals, that will be the biggest heist in the history of South Africa. Bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao. Da-na-na-na-na. That will be bigger than that money heist. This is the Mzansi chow, Mzansi chow, Mzansi chow of this whole situation. Think about it. Now, some of you may not know what the PIC is. The PIC, or the Public Investment Corporation, is a state-owned South African asset management company which is wholly owned by the government of South Africa. It manages a large portfolio of assets totaling about 2.7 trillion rands, which is approximately 142 billion US dollars as of March 2024, making it the largest asset manager in Africa. The PIC primarily invests its funds on behalf of public sector entities, including the Government Employees Pension Fund, which is its largest client and constitutes the main source of assets under its management. The PIC controls about 10% of the Johannesburg Stock Exchange and has investment across nearly all sectors of the South African economy. If this idea of taking money from the PIC, putting it into these infrastructure projects, which are then hijacked by the likes of Katiso Molefe, was successful, this was going to be the biggest heist of the pension funds. We were told that state capture was horrible because the Guptas stole billions, so many billions. How much more is this scandal, which actually has direct lines where we can see where the money was going to be stolen? Some of the stuff about the Guptas, in retrospect, we were manipulated. It was contestation about what would happen between Glencore and the Guptas, and Glencore was fighting for Optimum Coal Mine, and there were various politicians linked to Optimum Coal Mine. All of this was a fight for the IPP future of Eskom. And the beneficiaries have been very, very prominent people like Rupert, people like Mutsipe. I'm not convinced that everything that the Guptas did was state capture. I think it was contestation for contracts with Eskom, and senior politicians who thought that they were the ones coordinating the future of Eskom and the future of electricity supply in South Africa felt offended that these people were trying to come into their turf. And so we saw everything that we saw. And when those people ascended to power, all of a sudden IPPs are being won by African Rainbow Energy and Power. All of a sudden, there is a South African Energy Exchange. African Rainbow Energy and Power belongs to the brother-in-law of the president of South Africa, Patrice Motsepe. The South African Energy Exchange belongs to Johan Rupert, one of the most prominent people who you saw in the White House begging for Starlink to come and, help South Africa solve crime. That guy, you remember that guy? So they benefited. But when I think about this current issue we're discussing, it's clear Katiso Molefe is winning contracts for airports. The money for those contracts for airports is coming from the PIC. We've heard how PIC money will be used for infrastructure. In the other episode, I was telling you that one of the economists called Dambisa Moyo, who wrote a book called Dead Aid, has spoken about how large-scale infrastructure projects, how money is typically looted. And we're seeing a train, or we're connecting the dots. A wise man once said, connect the dots. We're connecting the dots.com right now. And this stuff is actually scary. It's scary if you think about it. If Katiso Molefe would have been successful, this would have been one of the biggest heists of the South African economy since the 1948 election. Just think about the scale of that scandal. So this is how, I'm going to stop here. Now you know how Katiso Molefe and his associates, compadres, almost stole an airport and almost looted 352 billion. And I don't think that we are anywhere close to the full extent of this scandal. I think this stuff is scary, actually. Whatever Mkhwanazi has uncovered here, if we fully get to the bottom of it, I think it's going to reshape South African politics for decades to come. I don't know what you think. Let's talk in the comment section.